All right, with the NFL season now 2 weeks old, it's time to recalibrate a bit and pick out some trade targets for you to stay ahead of your Dynasty league mates. My name is Paul, this is Pure Potential. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, leave a comment, let's go. All right, we're gonna go over 7 different players today, and I'll make specific trade suggestions for each one. Please keep in mind that I'm approaching this with a 12-team Superflex PPR tight end premium format in mind, and we're gonna start off with some rapid-fire rookies, specifically some of the most high-profile rookies in this 2025 class in TreVeyon Henderson, Omarion Hampton, and Travis Hunter. This is a great time of year to be capitalizing on rookie panic. I could include other guys here like RJ Harvey or Luther Burden or Colston Loveland, but I don't want this video to be rookies only. Basically, if you can acquire these players at 75 to 80% of their original draft cost, I think that's pretty much always a good idea. And that's not to say that every single one of these players is absolutely going to put it together and break out in a significant way, but it's just that these first 2 weeks in most cases don't really change the bet that we're making. Like, rookies are going to start slow. That is a very normal part of the process. And so anyone that's radically changing their expectations based on these first 2 games, I think you should try to capitalize on that. And this is a great tweet from Ryan Heath that really highlights how much we need to be patient with these players. Through 2 weeks as rookies, Bucky Irving was averaging 5.9 points per game. Rashee Rice had run 16 total routes. Jahmyr Gibbs had a 37% snap share and 10 fantasy points per game. Devon Achane had played 5 snaps. Breece Hall had a 36% snap share and 12.1 points per game. Najee Harris averaged 3.2 yards per carry. That sounds about in line with his career numbers. Justin Jefferson had 6 targets and was playing behind Olabisi Johnson. Nick Chubb had 5 rush attempts, and Christian McCaffrey averaged 2.7 yards per carry. There are so many cases where rookies struggle out of the gate and they put it together, they earn more work. I'm just not ready to fully panic on these players, and I would much rather lean into it than run away from these guys and sell them at a loss. A couple of these guys, Henderson, Hampton, Hunter, other rookies as well, a couple of these players could and probably will turn out to be smash picks in 2025, or at least big hits long term. Even if they miss 2025 expectations, this is Dynasty, right? So you still have them for the long haul. Zooming in on TreVeyon Henderson, he saw his usage decrease in week 2, which is certainly not what you want to see. He played just 30% of the snaps in week 2. He had fewer opportunities than Antonio Gibson. But the story here is pretty simple. He whiffed on a couple pass blocking reps. The team decided they wanted to prioritize protecting Drake May, and so they reduced his workload for the game. Honestly, pass protection was a strength of Henderson's game in college, so it's not really a long-term concern for me. I think he'll get this figured out. It's just a rookie making a rookie mistake. This one data point does not erase or minimize his awesome college profile, his elite draft capital, or his strong preseason performances. Like, he's going to get this stuff figured out. He's going to get more playing time. With Omarion Hampton, he has absolutely struggled so far, no question about it. He's given us 15 for 48 and 8 for 24 with a total of 3 receptions across his first 2 games. But we're still talking about a first-round pick on an extremely potent offense. And I'm not going to hear the Najee Harris stuff, right? He also averaged 3.5 yards per carry in this game. He is not good, and he's not going to be a serious obstacle for Omarion Hampton unless Hampton is just terrible himself, in which case he would have failed regardless. So Najee being there doesn't really change the bet that much. Is it possible that Hampton's just not good? Of course it is. But I also think it's way too early to make that call. In Jonathan Taylor's first game, he turned 9 carries into 22 yards, and he had other games during that rookie year of 11 for 22 and 7 for 12. Like, sometimes these rookies have bad games. Has Hampton had 2 in a row? Yes. But the team is still massively invested in his success. He's still an athletic freak. He had a well-rounded college profile. Like, does he maybe lack some lateral agility? Sure. Is there maybe a limited amount of receiving work to go around for running backs? Sure. But these are kind of more niche concerns when, like, the big picture is young, athletic, huge running back drafted in the first round that's going to get a lot of touches in his career. I still think he's much more of a buy than a sell. And then Travis Hunter, we've gotten much more good data than bad on Travis Hunter, but let's start with the bad here. He ran fewer routes in week 2 than week 1. because there was an injury in the secondary and they decided to play him a lot more on defense, and that reduced his route share on offense. And that is certainly not something that you want to be worrying about with your players that are put in your lineup, but it's also not something that we should frequently expect. And I think the team's going to figure out the right balance for him over time. They're going to figure out how to manage these in-game situations better, but we still know that offense is the priority for Travis Hunter. So they're still going to be going into the week. They're going to be game planning for how do we maximize his work on offense. Defense still comes second. So I don't think the route participation in week 2 is really a long-term concern. And then the other issue is just that the yardage hasn't been there. He's gotten a decent number of targets, hasn't been able to put up the yards. It's been a really weird start to the year where Trevor Lawrence has just had an easier time linking up with De'Ami Brown and Parker Washington than he has with Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas. I don't think we should expect that to continue because I think there is a massive talent gap here. I think this is purely variance, just early season weirdness that we see all the time. Travis Hunter has already been narrowly missed on a few potential big plays, at least one of which was in the end zone. Like, we're still talking about the number 2 overall pick here, and the targets have been there. 28% targets per out run. He's getting work in the screen game, right? Those design touches that are so valuable in a Liam Cohn offense. And it's really funny because no one is panicking about Emeka Egbuka. In fact, people are over the moon about Emeka Egbuka, who has a lower target share. He has a much lower targets per route run. And by the way, he's in a worse offense right now in terms of yards per play, points per game, passing yards per game. Like, across the board, the Buccaneers have been worse. And you can say, you know, they've played tougher defenses, like they played the Texans. Okay, but they also are without Tristan Wirfs right now. They lost 2 offensive linemen this past week. I think the Jaguars probably are the better offense this year. So if we have a player that's earning more targets in a better offense, why are we so panicked about him and not worried about Emeka Egbuka? I think this is just a vibes thing more than anything else. And the big picture view is still positive for Travis Hunter. So I'm absolutely buying him. And we're not going to do a whole thing on it, but I would be buying Brian Thomas as well. There's been a lot of miscues and weird plays so far. Certainly some areas of concern from week 2, but the team seems to be responding to it well. I think this Cohen offense is going to find its rhythm, and the usage for Brian Thomas has been outstanding. So that's the thing I want to focus on. Like, usage-wise, he's a massive regression candidate. He's getting the targets that you would hope for. We just have to hope that the efficiency comes through. I think that it will. But if you're trying to trade for these rookies, okay, I would start by trying to offer your 2026 first. I think in some cases that can actually snag you Travis Hunter. The other guys you probably still have to add, but I would be willing to add. I'd add a second on top, or I'd add another player off of my bench, you know, some startable asset that somebody else might need right now because they don't feel like they can rely on the rookies. I'd also be willing to pivot from a couple of other young players in Emeka Egbuka or Marvin Harrison. I like Emeka Egbuka a lot. I've raised him up in my rankings. I've talked about it. I still think that these other 3 guys are more valuable. I think they're better bets overall. Like, even with some new information that we've gotten, I still think they're slightly better bets. And then Marvin Harrison, you know, just haven't really seen the level of development I would have liked to see to this point. And so again, I'm taking the rookies here. Veteran pivots. The one that's really uncomfortable is probably Jonathan Taylor. Yes, he's a really useful piece to have right now. I still think he's, you know, a running back that's crossing the age apex, doesn't really catch passes. It's a very, very reliant on breaking big plays, scoring touchdowns. And he can do that. And he can finish, you know, RB5 this year, RB6 this year. That's totally possible. I'm just saying, long-term view in a vacuum, I would rather have the rookies and their whole careers ahead of them, the value accrual potential ahead of them. AJ Brown is probably a much easier one to stomach. It's also maybe more of a long shot to actually get done just because he has struggled so much. But those are a couple of options that you could look at. Guys, before we move on to the next player, I just want to remind you that subscribing to this channel is absolutely free, and I am coming out with new Dynasty videos each and every week. Like, I know a lot of the focus is on seasonal leagues, not for me. Right? I am all Dynasty all the time. Next week, we'll be talking about how to rebuild your Dynasty team. I'll be going over some in-season trading strategies as well. And I'll be back with buys and sells and weekly live streams reacting to the games every single week. So consider subscribing. We're making that push towards 10K, and I would love to get there in the month of September. Our next guy is, in my opinion, one of the biggest buys in Dynasty right now, and that is Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers has always been a good player, but it's been masked by low passing volume in Baltimore. He had a 22.7% target share and 1.7 yards per out run as a rookie. That is not bad at all. That jumped up to 24% target share and a much, much more efficient 2.35 yards per out run as a sophomore player. And now we're seeing another big leap. And people always want to talk about these year 3 breakouts for wide receivers, which is sort of an urban legend when it comes to previously unproductive wide receivers. Like, they don't just magically put everything together in year 3 and go from being bad to being really good. But something that's very real is the idea that consistently good wide receivers can become great ones in their 3rd season. That happened for CeeDee Lamb, if you want to go look up his first 3 years in the league. And it's happening right now for JSN and Zay Flowers. But only one of these guys is getting the fanfare that they deserve. Right? You can't get JSN in Dynasty right now. He is untouchable. And I totally understand that. He's been absolutely amazing. I'm just saying, let's see some love for Zay Flowers too, right? Like, let's check out this chart from Matt Harmon, which simply combines targets per route run and yards per route run so far this season with screens and quarterback scrambles removed. You can see overall wide receiver 1, Puka Nacua, up there in the top right corner, and there's JSN, and there is Zay Flowers. All right there. They are dominating the targets in their offense. They are being efficient on those targets. He is getting design touches, which he looks absolutely awesome on, but his usage isn't just gadgety. He has a very real 11.5 ADOT. He's got 5 deep targets through 2 games, and he's 3rd in the NFL in first read target percentage. Like, he is the passing game for the Ravens. So yes, I know there are going to be weeks where the Ravens just don't have to throw a lot. There are going to be games where Flowers doesn't break off a big play. But you could also say the same thing about JSN or even Drake London, who are also on extremely run-heavy offenses, at least through 2 games. And I don't know, it seems like a good thing that Zay Flowers has Lamar Jackson as his quarterback and not Sam Darnold. This isn't a Zay Flowers over JSN type of argument. It's just that I haven't seen these two even in the same conversation at all. And that makes Zay Flowers the much better dynasty target to me. And I think Flowers can continue to get there almost every week because of his obvious talent and how consolidated this passing game is. Like, Rashad Bateman is not a big target earner. Derrick Henry never gets the ball through the air. And Mark Andrews is, by all accounts, completely washed. So I have moved Zay Flowers up aggressively. He is now my wide receiver 18 in Dynasty, my 40th overall player in Superflex, PPR, tight end premium settings. If I'm trading for Zay Flowers, again, I want to start with a first-round pick. You know, if I'm pushing for the playoffs, use that first-round pick as the starting point in the trade, and then see what you have to add on top. In some cases, it might not be a whole lot because people had these prior expectations for who Zay Flowers is, and a lot of times 2 weeks isn't enough to erase that perception. I'd also happily tier down from Garrett Wilson or Marvin Harrison. I have all 3 of these guys in the same tier, but I don't think that the dynasty market does quite yet. So if you can move either of these 2 guys and get Zay Flowers with, you know, a second-round pick on top or another player that helps you, I think that's a great move to make. And I'd also pivot directly from T. Higgins or Chase Brown. I'd even add a little bit to these guys, but I would be thrilled to trade either of them straight up for Zay Flowers. And then I also have a bonus trade here. This is a trade that I made this week to acquire Zay Flowers in a league where I had 4 quarterbacks. I had Kyler, Dak, Tua, and Stafford. And another team needed a quarterback. It's a big week for that. So I was able to send Dak Prescott along with Tyrone Tracy in a 4th to add Zay Flowers. I was in big trouble at wide receiver because I have Godwin out. I've had Christian Kirk out. Darnell Mooney's been out. I'm piecing it together with Nico Collins and a bunch of injured old players. So I really liked adding Zay Flowers here. Next, we come to Mike Evans, who just seems like a classic buy low to me. By all accounts, he is still Mike Evans. He has a 27% target share and a 45% air yard share through 2 games. This stat in particular, I think, really paints the picture of Evans' season so far. According to the Fantasy Points data suite, Mike Evans is wide receiver 56 in points per game, 10.4, and he is the wide receiver 13 in expected points per game at 16.5. So he is currently 6 points per game below expectation. He hasn't gotten in the end zone yet. There's been some big plays that just have narrowly missed, right? Some off-target throws from Baker Mayfield. Some of those are going to connect sooner or later, and he's going to score touchdowns. He has 24 over the last 2 years. You're not going to keep him out of the end zone. Emeka Egbuka is not going to get every receiving touchdown for the Buccaneers this year. Now, Chris Godwin's going to return at some point. His role, in my opinion, just isn't going to affect Evans. They don't overlap really at all. If anything, I think Godwin coming back, assuming he's actually healthy and effective, could just help this offense be a little bit more efficient, create more scoring opportunities. And I think what's more notable is that Tristan Wirfs should also be back sometime around week 5. That's huge for the pass protection, especially now that they've had some other injuries along the line. That might give Baker a little bit more time to find Mike Evans, or just a little more confidence to hang in the pocket and deliver some accurate passes. So I think he's a great target right now if you're light at wide receiver. Obviously, you don't buy Mike Evans on every dynasty team, but if you're a clear contending team and you are a little light at wide receiver, you're looking to add, especially in 3 wide receiver leagues, it can be tough to have that depth all season long. I'm happy to send a second round pick for him if you can get that done. I would happily trade DJ Moore or Michael Pittman straight up. Pittman's been a bit of a riser early in the season. DJ Moore has consistently carried more dynasty value, a little bit more hype around him. If you can make that trade, I'd be all for it. And then at running back, I don't know if either of these get it done straight up. I suspect Etienne could, Travis Etienne for Mike Evans. And then Javonte Williams. He's just been a huge riser, and rightfully so. I did not see it coming at all, but he is actually playing fine. I don't think the Cowboys have any interest in switching things up, and it's a pretty favorable fantasy role. But I would trade either of those running backs for Evans, assuming that you are in need of a wide receiver. Now let's move over to the running back position with Jaylen Warren. It's been a while since I caped up for Jaylen Warren on this channel. Honestly, I just thought Caleb Johnson was going to cannibalize too many touches, and that has not been the case at all. It was actually Kenny Gainwell that limited Jaylen Warren in week 1, which is like the most Arthur Smith thing of all time. But he was awful, predictably, and the distribution shifted heavily in Warren's favor in week 2. In week 2, we saw 14 carries and 4 targets for Warren. We had 5 carries and 5 targets for Gainwell, and we had just 1 carry for Caleb Johnson. I think moving forward, I see this backfield playing out pretty similarly to the 2024 Cardinals, where Jaylen Warren is kind of the James Conner, getting the bulk of the carries, healthy involvement in the passing game. Kenny Gainwell is like the Amari DeMarcado, pure pass game specialist, very game script dependent role. Sometimes he'll get a handful of targets if the team is really trailing, but otherwise not that involved. And then Caleb Johnson as kind of the Trey Benson, right? 3rd round rookie, gets a little bit of run, but is largely uninvolved, kind of a red shirt type of season. That's how I really see this playing out. And that is going to be very good for Jaylen Warren. I don't think it's going to lead to like RB1 production. I don't know if the offense is good enough for that, but I think he is a very solid RB2 moving forward. You can just set it and forget it in your lineup. And a big point in his favor is that the team has a 25% target share for running back so far. The wide receivers outside of DK Metcalf on this team just suck, frankly, and Rodgers has no escapability. So he is checking the ball down early and often. I'd expect that to continue. We even got a comment from Aaron Rodgers this week that he would like to get Warren even more involved in the passing game. So I think he's got a really solid floor moving forward, at least for the rest of this season. Coming back to the trade opportunities here, again, good time to be sending out 2nd round picks for players that are going to immediately slide into your lineup and help your team. It's going to depend on whether the other manager is currently relying on Jaylen Warren, but if not, no reason this can't go through. There are some other running backs, though, that I would be pivoting off of. I would rather have Jaylen Warren at this point than Tony Pollard, David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, or J.K. Dobbins. All of those guys have gotten volume or been somewhat usable so far this year, but I would still take Warren. And then at wide receiver, if you can manage to send a Jerry Jeudy, Stephon Diggs, Cedric Tillman, or Quentin Johnston for Jaylen Warren, I think that's a totally reasonable cross-position trade. Again, if you're trying to address a need. Now, before we get into our final buy of the day, I do want to tell you about Dynasty Team Breakdowns. If you feel like your Dynasty roster just needs a little bit of extra help, you can go down to the description and find a link to a Google form where you can request a Dynasty Team Breakdown. When I break down your team, I will look over your roster, the other rosters in your league, the league settings, any notes that you might want me to have, and I'll try to create a plan for your Dynasty team, right? Should you be contending or should you be rebuilding? Based on that, what kind of moves should you be making? What positions should you prioritize? Where do you need to buy? Where do you need to sell? I even like to suggest a lot of specific trade options. So if you get through this video and you feel like you still need more advice, you need more ideas for how to salvage your Dynasty season, you can certainly check out Dynasty team breakdowns down there in the description. We're going to close things out today, though, with Juwan Johnson. Arguably the most surprising breakout of the season so far, but in hindsight, maybe we should have paid attention when the Saints gave him a 3-year, $30 million contract back in March. It's kind of a lot for a part-time receiving tight end, but regardless, Juwan Johnson is currently sitting as the tight end 2 in fantasy football, and it's just a perfect storm for him right now in this Saints offense. Kellen Moore is running at a fast pace as he always does, so they're racking up tons of plays, and the Saints are always trailing. And as a result, the team is 6th in pass attempts. And I don't know if Spencer Rattler is any good, but if he's bad, he's definitely like Jameis Winston bad, where he's going to throw the ball up, he's going to pepper his top options with targets. And right now, Juwan is one of those top targets. They're letting him play a full-time role. Last year, he ran just 62% of the routes, while Foster Moreau ran 40%, and Taysom Hill mixed in for whatever it is Taysom Hill does. This year, he's at 82%. He is running just as many routes as Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. He's run 73 versus 76 for Olave and 72 for Shaheed. And he's earning a crazy number of targets on those routes, 20 targets so far through 2 games. The whole offense is just so consolidated around the primary weapons. So tight end 2 in points per game. I don't think he's going to finish there, but there is no reason to think that this usage is just going to disappear. I think it's going to keep up all year. I think he's very easily going to finish as a top 10 tight end, and I think he has the upside to finish top 5. As far as trading for Juwan Johnson, stop me if you've heard this before, but I think you can trade a 2026 second-round pick for him in tight end premium leagues. I think he has risen to that point where that's a reasonable offer. I'd also pivot off of any of these older tight ends that have had more brand equity in the past: Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, Travis Kelce, or David Njoku. I think you're just better off having Juwan Johnson at this point than any of those other players. And he's younger than all of them too. I mean, not by much. He's 29, but like, you're not gaining anything at this point by having those older veterans, even though we've expected a lot more from them in the past. And then at other positions, just because, you know, same position swaps can be tough, guys like Tyrone Tracy, DeAndre Swift, Cedric Tillman, Quentin Johnston, there's like dozens of players in that value range, but those types of players, right? Running backs that have some fragility, that see maybe their roles are decreasing, wide receivers that are going to be very volatile week to week, that are in that kind of wide receiver 3 type of conversation. Any of those, I think, are good swaps to add Juwan Johnson. And I've got one more bonus trade for you because I was also able to acquire a share of Juwan. I think this was actually before week 2, but I sent away David Njoku. I got Juwan Johnson and a 2026 third. So theoretically, it is possible to get this type of a trade done. Anyway, that's going to do it for today, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you for supporting the channel. Hopefully you can get some of those buys done, improve your Dynasty teams. If you enjoy my content and you want to see weekly live streams, you want to see more Dynasty content in the future, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It really goes a long way. And if you'd like even more Dynasty content from me every single week, you can become a YouTube member. That's going to get you access to my top 250 Dynasty rankings that are updated weekly. I also do an additional private live stream for the YouTube members every single weekend. And you get access to private Discord channels where you can ask me trade questions, strategy questions, pretty much whenever you want. I'll be back soon, guys, with another Dynasty video. Hopefully I'll see you then.